Danger. On the history of picture. A series in which we follow the growth of a new art. Its earliest beginnings, the first concept of projection, the development of story and spectacle, and the great stars. All a part of the history of the motion picture. Girls in Danger have thrilled audiences ever since the movies began at the turn of the century. We're the screen's loveliest heroines in their most precarious predicaments. Our first girl in danger is beautiful JETTA GOUDAL. The picture of Amos. The producer, Cecil B. DeMille. And the year, 1920.
A masquerade carnival on the Riviera. Jetta, as a European princess, is with Rod LaRocque. She is about to be kidnapped by Baron Garcia, played by Noah Beery. The Baron's henchmen cleverly conceal the victim with a Mardi Gras mask. The Baron, an international scoundrel, previously tricked Jetta into marriage. She escaped, and now he's determined to have her back. Rod hears the powerful launch and quickly realizes that the Baron is heading for his castle fortress across the bay. accidentally, he trips the spring of the trap door.
For our next predicament, we go back to 1912 and a picture called Man's Genesis. It was the first of D.W. Griffith's series on the history of man, and it caused quite a sensation.
The object of the heroine's affections is a peace-loving young man whom Griffith called Weak Hands. His rival, symbolically named Brute Force, also wants the heroine. Griffith called her Lily White. Weak Hands is no match for Brute Force. Weak Hands is played by Bobby Heron. He was frequently teamed with Mae Marsh, who is Lily White. Griffith, at the time, was grooming Mae to replace Mary Pickford. His future hopeless, Weak Hands is desolate. Then, suddenly, almost by accident, an idea. He has invented the stone club and is about to change the history of warfare for all time.
In his sequels to Man's Genesis, director Griffith continued his depiction of man's invention of weapons. The club had become a commonplace weapon. And now, the bow and arrow. Griffith's imaginative illustrations of man's instinct to destroy himself are as timely today as when he filmed them half a century ago. Mae Marsh, even as a cave girl, was one of the helpless heroines. But there were other girls who were more self-reliant. Leatrice Joy, for example. In 1927, in his picture Vanity, DeMille cast Miss Joy as a spoiled society girl who, on a dare, goes to visit Sea Captain Alan Hale.
Miss Joy, incidentally, helped make popular the original Boyish Bob. Aboard Hale's freighter, Leatrice begins to suspect that the captain may not be quite as lovable a fellow as she had imagined. The plot is thickened by the ship's cook, played by Noble Johnson. Here was a villain with a single thought. Johnson seemed to find his best opportunities for villainy aboard ship. 5 years later, as the native chieftain in King Kong, he abducted beautiful Fay Ray from the explorer's ship to make her a bride for the monster ape.
The early movie makers took themselves pretty seriously and rarely spoofed their own cliches. But Mack Sennett had no such qualms, as you'll see in Teddy at the Throttle. And as usual, Mack Sennett deliberately speeded up the action for comic effect.
Wallace Beery, whose brother Noah we saw earlier in that damp cellar, is the villain, chaining a distraught Gloria Swanson to the railroad tracks. Gloria whistles for Teddy, the wonder dog. A canine comic as important to Sennett then as Lassie was to become to television later on. Teddy speeds the message to the bogged-down hero, Bobby Vernon. Miss Swanson's masterful note does the trick. The good guys get the last laugh with the audience as Teddy trees the villain.
In 1920, D.W. Griffith selected Lillian Gish as his girl in danger, referred to the screen the famous play Way Down East. It was the time-honored story of the honest country girl betrayed by a callous city playboy. Despondent, her baby dead, she heads aimlessly out into the New England blizzard.
Hopelessly lost, Anna is unaware that David, the farm boy who loves her, is desperately searching for her. David is played by Richard Barthelmess. Griffith, whose studios were at the time in Mamaroneck, New York, shot most of these exteriors along the Connecticut River. These scenes were supposed to take place at night, and to give this illusion, Griffith tinted the film blue for the audiences of 1920. The dedicated Miss Gish was in almost as much danger as the fictional Anna, spending hours on the freezing ice floes to film these scenes.
The dangers for movie girls were to change with the coming of sound. They began to be threatened with destruction, not so much by physical dangers as by their own emotional problems. Until today, a screen heroine's rescuer is likely to be her own psychiatrist.